During a routine visit to her brother-in-law Marshall's house, I couldn't help but overhear him boasting about his recent purchase of a luxury sports car. My jaw nearly hit the floor. How could he afford such an extravagant splurge? Something didn't add up. Marshall had always been a bit flashy with his spending habits, but this seemed excessive, even for him. As the executor of my late sister's will and the trustee of my daughter Lena's college fund, I had entrusted him with a significant responsibility. A knot of unease tightened in my stomach as doubts crept into my mind. Later that evening, I found myself poring over Lena's tuition statements, searching for any irregularities. To my dismay, I discovered that several payments had been delayed or missed entirely. Confronting Marshall seemed like the logical next step, but a part of me dreaded the potential confrontation. The following weekend, I mustered the courage to broach the subject during our family brunch. "Marshall, I noticed some discrepancies with Lena's tuition payments," I began, my tone deliberately level. "Is everything okay with her college fund?" Marshall's expression hardened, and he waved off my concerns with a dismissive hand. "Just a clerical error, Ivy. Nothing to worry about." His nonchalant response did little to alleviate my growing suspicions. In fact, it only fueled my determination to uncover the truth. Over the next few weeks, I embarked on a discreet investigation, meticulously tracking Marshall's expenditures and lifestyle changes. The more I dug, the more glaring the red flags became. Extravagant vacations, luxury car payments, and a sudden penchant for high-end designer attire, all of which seemed far beyond his means as a middle manager at a small firm. Confronting him directly seemed futile, as he would likely brush off my concerns once again. I needed concrete evidence to back up my suspicions. That's when I decided to enlist the help of a private investigator, a decision that would ultimately unravel a web of deceit far more tangled than I could have ever imagined. The private investigator's findings left me reeling. Marshall had indeed been embezzling from Lena's college fund, siphoning off thousands to finance his lavish lifestyle. The evidence was damning. Bank statements, wire transfers, even video footage of him withdrawing cash at various ATMs. My heart ached at the thought of my sister's hard-earned savings being squandered by the very person entrusted to safeguard it. I knew I needed to confront Marshall, but a part of me feared his reaction. Would he deny the allegations? Lash out in anger? Or worse, attempt to manipulate me with his silver-tongued lies? I had to tread carefully. The opportunity presented itself during Lena's birthday dinner. As we gathered around the table, Marshall arrived fashionably late, sporting a brand-new designer suit that likely cost more than my monthly salary. "Wow, Marshall, that's quite the outfit," I remarked, unable to hide the sarcasm in my voice. "Must have cost a pretty penny." He flashed a smug grin, oblivious to the weight of my words. What can I say? I like to treat myself every now and then. I bit my tongue, suppressing the urge to confront him then and there. Instead, I shifted the conversation to Lena's tuition, feigning concern over the missed payments. Marshall's demeanor changed in an instant. His eyes narrowed, and his jaw clenched. "Like I told you before, it's just a clerical error. The university's accounting department is a mess." Lena, sensing the tension, spoke up. "Uncle Marshall, is everything okay with my college fund? Mom's been worried sick." He forced a reassuring smile. "Of course, sweetheart, your aunt is just being a worrywart. You know how she gets." The dinner progressed in an uncomfortable silence, punctuated by Marshall's occasional boastful remarks about his latest acquisitions. Each word further solidified my determination to expose his deceit. In the days that followed, I meticulously compiled the evidence gathered by the private investigator, organizing it into an airtight case. I also confided in my son Grant, seeking his technical expertise in gathering additional proof. Grant's eyes widened as I laid out the facts before him. "Uncle Marshall did what?" "That's low, even for him." I nodded solemnly. "I know. But we need to be strategic about how we handle this. If we confront him directly, he'll likely deny everything and try to discredit us." Grant pondered for a moment before offering a suggestion. "What if we bait him into admitting it himself? Like, have him explain some bogus banking issue related to Lena's account and secretly record his response?" A slow smile spread across my face. It was a risky plan, but one that could potentially yield the irrefutable evidence I needed to bring Marshall to justice. With Grant's technical expertise and my determination, we set the trap, eagerly awaiting the moment when Marshall's greed would be his undoing. With the evidence stacked against Marshall, I knew it was time to take decisive action. The thought of confronting him filled me with a mix of trepidation and determination. This man had not only betrayed my trust, but had also robbed my daughter of her future security. I arranged for a private investigator, Tony, to meet me at a neutral location, a quiet cafe downtown. As I awaited his arrival, my mind raced with 1,000 different scenarios, each more unsettling than the last. Tony's gruff voice snapped me back to reality. "Ivy, good to see you." He slid into the booth across from me, a thick manila envelope in hand. I nodded, my throat suddenly dry. "What have you uncovered?" Tony wasted no time in laying out the damning facts. Bank statements, wire transfers, even surveillance footage. It was all there, irrefutable proof of Marshall's deceit. With each revelation, my anger grew, simmering just beneath the surface. "This should be more than enough to nail him," Tony concluded, sliding the envelope across the table. I ran my fingers over the smooth surface, my mind reeling. "Thank you, Tony. You've been invaluable." As I left the cafe, the weight of the evidence felt like a lead weight in my hands. But it also steeled my resolve. Marshall had to be stopped, and I was the only one who could do it. The confrontation played out a few days later, during a family gathering at Marshall's house. I waited until everyone had settled in, then cleared my throat to command the room's attention. "Marshall, I think it's time we addressed the elephant in the room," I began, my voice steady despite the turmoil raging within. He quirked an eyebrow, feigning ignorance. "And what might that be, dear sister-in-law?" I let the silence hang for a moment, then dropped the bombshell. "I know you've been embezzling from Lena's college fund." A hush fell over the room as all eyes turned to Marshall. His expression darkened, his lips curling into a sneer. "That's a serious accusation, Ivy. I hope you have proof to back it up." Without a word, I slid the manila envelope across the coffee table, its contents spilling out for all to see. Marshall's face drained of color as he scanned the damning evidence. "How could you, Marshall?" My voice trembled with barely contained fury. "That money was meant for Lena's education, her future." He lashed out, his eyes wild with panic. "You don't understand. I needed that money. My business was failing, and I had to keep up appearances." The room erupted into chaos, with various family members voicing their outrage and disbelief. In the midst of the commotion, I caught Lena's gaze, her eyes brimming with tears of betrayal. Marshall's excuses fell on deaf ears as the gravity of his actions sank in. He had not only stolen from his own flesh and blood, but had also shattered the sacred trust bestowed upon him. As the dust settled, I knew that this was just the beginning. Marshall would face the full consequences of his greed, both legal and personal, and I would be there, unwavering in my determination to ensure justice was served. In the aftermath of Marshall's exposure, a palpable tension lingered in the air. Family gatherings that were once filled with laughter and warmth now carried an undercurrent of mistrust and betrayal. Whispers and sidelong glances trailed Marshall wherever he went, a constant reminder of his disgraceful actions. I, however, refused to let his transgressions overshadow the unity of our family. Determined to regain control of the situation, I took strategic steps to undermine Marshall's credibility further and solidify my position as the moral authority. It started subtly, with casual conversations at family dinners and get-togethers. I would innocently inquire about Marshall's latest purchases or extravagant trips, feigning genuine curiosity while subtly planting seeds of doubt in others' minds. "That's a lovely new watch, Marshall," I remarked one evening, eyeing the glittering timepiece adorning his wrist. "It must have cost a pretty penny." He puffed out his chest, oblivious to my veiled jabs. "Only the best for a man of my stature." I nodded, a tight smile plastered on my face. "I see. And how's the business doing these days? Well enough to support such luxurious tastes?" Marshall's bravado faltered for a split second, but he quickly regained his composure. "Never better, dear sister-in-law. Never better." As the weeks passed, I continued to subtly undermine his credibility, carefully orchestrating situations that would expose his lavish spending habits and questionable financial decisions. In tandem with these calculated maneuvers, I reached out to trusted family members, confiding in them my growing concerns about Marshall's behavior. One by one, I rallied them to my cause, solidifying a united front against his deceit. Aunt Judith, ever the voice of reason, was among the first to lend her support. "You're doing the right thing, Ivy," she assured me during one of our private conversations. "That scoundrel needs to be held accountable for his actions." Even Lena and Grant, initially hesitant to escalate the conflict, eventually came around, recognizing the necessity of our collective efforts to ensure justice was served. With each strategic move, I could see Marshall's grip on the family's trust slipping. His once boastful demeanor withered under the weight of our scrutiny, replaced by a nervous, guarded facade. Yet, for all his flaws and misdeeds, Marshall remained a formidable opponent, his silver tongue ever ready to weave intricate webs of deceit and manipulation. It became clear that more decisive action was needed, a final, irrefutable blow that would shatter his facade and leave him with nowhere to hide. That's when Grant's technical expertise proved invaluable once again. Together, we devised a plan to bait Marshall into admitting his wrongdoings on a recorded phone call, under the guise of seeking his assistance with a banking issue related to Lena's account. The trap was set, and as Marshall unwittingly took the bait, his every word was captured, a damning testament to his greed and betrayal. With the recording in hand, I felt a sense of grim satisfaction. The evidence was now undeniable, and Marshall's downfall was all but assured. It was time to strike the final blow and ensure that justice was served once and for all. The trap was set, and Marshall took the bait hook, line, and sinker. With Grant's technical expertise, we had managed to record a phone conversation in which Marshall admitted to embezzling from Lena's college fund. "It's just a temporary solution, Ivy," Marshall's voice crackled through the speaker, laced with desperation. "My business hit a rough patch, but once things pick up, I'll pay every penny back, I swear." I schooled my features into a mask of concern, careful not to give away the game. "I understand, Marshall, but you know how important this fund is for Lena's future. We can't afford any more mishaps." His tone shifted, taking on a placating quality. Of course, you have my word, this won't happen again." With each falsehood that tumbled from his lips, my anger simmered beneath the surface. This man, entrusted with safeguarding my daughter's future, had betrayed us in the most despicable way. As the call ended, I glanced at Grant, who gave me a subtle nod. The evidence was irrefutable, a damning indictment of Marshall's greed and deceit. The next step was to confront him head-on, in front of the entire family. I steeled my resolve, knowing that this would be the moment of reckoning, the final nail in the coffin of his web of lies. It was during a large family gathering, ostensibly to celebrate Aunt Judith's birthday, that I made my move. As the festivities were in full swing, I cleared my throat, commanding the room's attention. "Before we continue, there's something I need to address," I began, my voice steady and unwavering. Marshall shot me a wary glance, sensing the shift in the atmosphere. Without preamble, I pressed play on the recording, filling the room with the damning evidence of his admission. A hush fell over the gathered crowd as Marshall's words echoed through the speakers, his every falsehood laid bare. "You see, Marshall?" I gestured towards the stunned faces of our family members. "This is what your greed has wrought. Not only did you betray my trust, but you robbed your own niece of her future." Marshall's face contorted into a mask of rage as the realization dawned on him. "How dare you? That recording is a fabrication, a twisted lie." I shook my head, unmoved by his outburst. "Deny it all you want, but the evidence speaks for itself." As if on cue, Grant stepped forward, brandishing a thick folder brimming with bank statements, wire transfers, and other damning financial records. "We have more than just the recording, Uncle Marshall," he stated, his voice laced with disgust. "Every penny you stole, every lie you told, it's all here, in black and white." The room erupted into a cacophony of outrage, with various family members hurling accusations and insults at the disgraced Marshall. In the midst of the chaos, I caught Lena's eye, her expression a mix of pain and relief. Marshall, cornered and exposed, lashed out in a desperate bid to salvage what little credibility he had left. But his pleas fell on deaf ears, drowned out by the collective fury of those he had wronged. As the dust settled, the family's verdict was unanimous. Marshall would face the full consequences of his actions, both legal and social. He had not only squandered our trust, but had also shattered the bonds that held our family together. In that moment, as I watched Marshall's world crumble around him, I felt a sense of grim satisfaction. Justice had been served, and the price of his greed had been laid bare for all to see. The family meeting was a powder keg, emotions running high as Marshall's misdeeds were laid bare before everyone. The air was thick with tension, each accusation and condemnation adding fuel to the already raging fire. Marshall, backed into a corner, lashed out with a desperation born of despair. "You're all being manipulated," he spat, his eyes wild and unfocused. "This is nothing but a twisted ploy by Ivy to turn you against me." I remained steadfast, unmoved by his desperate attempts to deflect blame. "The evidence speaks for itself, Marshall. Your greed and betrayal have been exposed, plain as day." Aunt Judith, ever the voice of reason, stepped forward, her normally kind eyes hardened with disappointment. "Enough of your lies, boy. You've disgraced this family with your actions, and it's time to face the consequences." Marshall's gaze darted around the room, searching for any hint of support or sympathy. But he found none, only the accusing stares of those he had wronged. "You can't do this to me," he snarled, his composure crumbling like a house of cards. "I'm family, damn it! Blood is supposed to mean something." Uncle Frank, a stoic man of few words, fixed Marshall with a withering glare. "You forfeited that right when you stole from your own niece. You're no kin of mine." The weight of their collective condemnation seemed to crush Marshall, and for a moment he almost appeared remorseful. But it was a fleeting moment, quickly replaced by a mask of defiance. "Fine," he spat, his voice dripping with venom. "If that's how you want to play it, so be it. But this isn't over, Ivy. You haven't heard the last of me." With that parting shot, he stormed out of the room, leaving a trail of stunned silence in his wake. In the aftermath of his dramatic exit, the family united in a collective resolve to pursue legal action against Marshall. Aunt Judith took the lead, her no-nonsense attitude a steadying force in the midst of the turmoil. "We'll need to gather all the evidence and present it to the authorities," she announced, her tone brooking no argument. "That snake won't slither away from this unscathed." As the wheels of justice began to turn, I found myself pulled into 1,000 different directions, answering questions and providing statements. But through it all, my focus remained on Lena and Grant, ensuring that their emotional well-being was prioritized. "I can't believe Uncle Marshall would do something like this," Lena confided in me, her voice trembling with a mix of anger and sadness. "He was supposed to be someone we could trust." I pulled her into a comforting embrace, my heart aching for the pain she was enduring. "I know, sweetheart. But we'll get through this together, and we'll make sure he faces the consequences of his actions." Grant, ever the pragmatist, took a more analytical approach. "At least we have the evidence to nail him," he pointed out, his brow furrowed in concentration. "He can't worm his way out of this one." As the legal proceedings unfolded, Marshall's web of deceit began to unravel. Each lie and fabrication exposed to the harsh light of truth. It was a slow, agonizing process, but one that was necessary to ensure that justice was served. Through it all, I remained a steadfast pillar of strength for my family, unwavering in my determination to see this through to the bitter end. Marshall's betrayal had shaken us to the core, but it had also forged a newfound unity, a resolve to stand together against those who would seek to tear us apart. As the final verdict was handed down, a sense of catharsis washed over me. Marshall's fate was sealed, his greed and deceit having finally caught up with him. It was a bittersweet victory, tempered by the pain of his betrayal, but a victory nonetheless. And in that moment, I knew that our family had emerged stronger, more resilient than ever before. The scars of Marshall's actions would linger, but they would serve as a reminder of the importance of trust, loyalty, and the unbreakable bonds that true family shared. The courtroom was a battleground, a stage upon which Marshall's misdeeds were laid bare for all to witness. Each damning piece of evidence, every financial record and wire transfer, painted a vivid picture of his greed and betrayal. As the prosecution methodically built their case, Marshall's once confident demeanor crumbled, his mask of arrogance giving way to fear and desperation. Gone was the smooth-talking charmer who had so easily manipulated those around him. In his place sat a broken man, his lies and deceit exposed for all to see. When it was my turn to take the stand, I felt a surge of determination coursing through my veins. This was the moment I had been preparing for, the culmination of months of anguish and turmoil. The prosecutor, a no-nonsense woman with a steely gaze, approached me with a reassuring nod. "Mrs. Lawson, please recount the events leading up to your discovery of the defendant's embezzlement scheme." Drawing a steadying breath, I launched into my testimony, laying out the details with a clarity and precision that left no room for doubt. I recounted the discrepancies in Lena's tuition payments, my growing suspicions, and the eventual uncovering of Marshall's web of deceit. Throughout my testimony, I could feel Marshall's gaze boring into me, a silent plea for mercy or understanding. But I refused to meet his eyes, steadfast in my resolve to see justice served. As the trial progressed, the weight of the evidence became overwhelming. Financial records, witness statements, even the recorded phone call, each piece of evidence added another layer to the damning portrait of Marshall's misdeeds. In a last-ditch effort to salvage his crumbling defense, Marshall took the stand, his eyes wild and desperate. "I never meant for things to go this far," he pleaded, his voice cracking with emotion. "I was just trying to keep my head above water, to provide for my family." The prosecutor was relentless, her questions sharp and incisive. "And you felt justified in stealing from your own niece's college fund to achieve that?" Marshall faltered, his carefully constructed facade crumbling under the weight of his own lies. I made a mistake, a terrible mistake, but I swear I was going to pay it all back." The courtroom erupted in a chorus of derisive scoffs, his excuses falling on deaf ears. In the end, the verdict was unanimous, guilty on all counts. As the judge read out the sentence, a hush fell over the courtroom. Marshall's face drained of color, the realization of his fate finally setting in. "You have been found guilty of embezzlement, fraud, and breach of trust," the judge intoned, his voice carrying the weight of authority. "In light of the severity of your crimes and the damage inflicted upon your own family, I hereby sentence you to 5 years in state prison, followed by a substantial period of probation and financial restitution." The gavel fell with a resounding finality, echoing through the silent courtroom, like a death knell for Marshall's once charmed life. As the bailiffs led him away in handcuffs, his gaze found mine one last time. In that moment, I saw a flicker of something. Regret, perhaps, or a fleeting acknowledgement of the pain he had caused. But it was too little, too late. Marshall's disintegration was complete, his greed and deceit having exacted a devastating toll. He had not only lost his freedom but also the respect and trust of those closest to him. In the aftermath of the trial, our family rallied around Lena and Grant, determined to help them heal from the trauma of Marshall's betrayal. Aunt Judith and Uncle Frank took the lead in securing Lena's college fund, ensuring that her dreams of higher education would not be derailed by her uncle's misdeeds. As for me, I found solace in the knowledge that justice had been served, that Marshall's actions had not gone unpunished. It was a bittersweet victory, tinged with the sadness of a family torn asunder, but a victory nonetheless. And through it all, I remained steadfast in my role as the matriarch, a pillar of strength and resilience for my children and extended family. We had weathered the storm, emerging battered but unbroken, our bonds forged anew in the fires of adversity. The aftermath of Marshall's downfall was a whirlwind of emotions: relief, anger, and a strange sense of emptiness. As he began serving his prison sentence, the weight of his betrayal seemed to settle over our family like a heavy shroud. In the weeks and months that followed, I witnessed the toll his actions had taken on Lena and Grant. Lena, once a bright and carefree young woman, became withdrawn and guarded, her trust in others shaken to the core. "How could he do this to us, Mom?" she would ask, her eyes brimming with tears. Uncle Marshall was supposed to be family. I would hold her close, offering what little comfort I could. "I don't have all the answers, sweetheart, but we'll get through this together. We're stronger than his greed and lies." Grant, ever the pragmatist, channeled his anger into his studies, throwing himself into his computer science coursework with a renewed fervor. "At least we got that scumbag locked up," he muttered one evening, his brow furrowed in concentration. "He won't be able to hurt anyone else." Aunt Judith and Uncle Frank rallied around us, offering their unwavering support and guidance. Together, We navigated the legal intricacies of securing Lena's college fund, ensuring that Marshall's misdeeds would not derail her educational dreams. "That boy has brought shame upon this family," Aunt Judith declared, her voice thick with disappointment. "But we won't let his actions define us." As the dust settled, I found myself reflecting on the painful journey that had led us to this point. The betrayal, the emotional turmoil, the arduous pursuit of justice. It had all taken a toll, both emotionally and financially. But through it all, a newfound resilience had emerged, a steely determination to rebuild and forge ahead, stronger than ever before. "We made it, Mom," Lena murmured one evening, her eyes shining with a glimmer of hope. "We survived Uncle Marshall's lies." I smiled, feeling a sense of pride swell in my chest. Yes, we did, and will continue to thrive despite his best efforts to tear us down. In the years that followed, our family became a beacon of strength and unity in the face of adversity. Lena graduated with honors, her college fund intact and her future bright. Grant excelled in his studies, securing a coveted internship at a renowned tech company, and I, the steadfast matriarch, watched over them with a renewed sense of purpose. Marshall's betrayal had been a harsh lesson, but one that had ultimately brought us closer together, strengthening the bonds that truly mattered. As for Marshall himself, he faded into a distant memory, a cautionary tale of greed and the consequences of breaking sacred trusts. His name was seldom spoken, that his existence relegated to the shadows of our family's history. On the rare occasions when he did cross our minds, it was with a mix of pity and contempt. Pity for the man he had become, consumed by his own greed and deceit, and contempt for the pain he had inflicted upon those who once loved him. But we refused to let his actions define us. Instead, we channeled our energy into building a new foundation, one built upon the bedrock of trust, loyalty, and an unwavering commitment to one another. And as I looked around at my family, their faces alight with hope and determination, I knew that we had emerged from the crucible of Marshall's betrayal stronger, more resilient than ever before. The scars of his actions would forever be a part of our history, but they would serve as a reminder of the importance of vigilance, of never taking the bonds of family for granted. For in the end, it was those bonds, unbreakable, unwavering, that had carried us through the darkest of times and would continue to guide us towards a brighter future, free from the shackles of greed and deceit.
We are all leaving if you are the CEO. This business is finished. As I picked up the stack of letters left on the CEO's desk, Fu announced to Kevin, the department head, that he had sneaked into the office without being seen. That's what this is all about, then. When I turned down his demands for a raise, he used to leave with a final statement like, "You'll regret this." It appears that he planned to go and take other staff members with him. I feel like I've failed in some respects when an employee tries to incite revolt. But since this was a significant issue, I made sure to check with Kevin. "Kevin, just to clarify, you're saying you intend to resign from the company, correct?" Kevin gripped his gut as he let out a loud laugh. "Why, I am saying just that. I have no other option because you won't increase my pay. Talented people are abandoning dull companies in this day and age." When I heard this, I answered, "Thank you," looking him in the eye. "That is really beneficial. I'll get the required documentation done." "What?" Kevin made an astonished squeak, his face twisted in bewilderment. He had no notion that things he didn't like were going to be revealed. "Chris is my name. I am the CEO of a tech startup, and I am in my 30s. Although it may sound amazing, becoming the CEO of business is not as wonderful as it first appears. It's nothing to brag about because I didn't start the company myself. I ended up taking over the role because of circumstances. My dad actually started the business a few years ago, but he died after falling unexpectedly. I'm sure he overexerted himself because I've heard that he's been working nonstop for years and hardly getting any sleep. I worked for a big multinational firm and lived abroad for a number of years while my dad was in charge of the business. Although I was aware that he had founded the company, I was never able to witness his hardships or efforts before he abruptly left. My dad had requested me to assist him with the business at the time, but it's too late to work with him now. I didn't feel anxious about the future because I've always been economical and had saved a respectable sum of money. I was interested when my dad informed me about launching his company, but I wanted to finish a big project at work that I was really invested in. I informed him that after finishing my current task, I might give it some serious thought. I learned of my father's death just as I was finishing off the endeavor. Ultimately, I quit my work before finishing the project, went back home, and took over my dad's business. I am not very proud of myself under these circumstances, but I cannot continue to look down indefinitely. My father always had my best interests in mind when he spoke to me. Even though I work for a large firm, I went through a difficult time in high school when I didn't fit in and ended up skipping class, eventually enrolling in a free school. My dad always encouraged me with kind words. Pursue what you love and compete in areas you are good at. One day, you'll discover your strengths. Those words inspired me, and I started exploring things I was interested in and believed would be useful in the future. I studied computers, languages, and even got certified in color design. Because of that, I was able to develop apps as a high schooler and gained enough language skills to hold business conversations with foreigners. I wanted to honor my father by taking the company he founded public and turning it into a business that contributes to society. I believed fulfilling his dream would be the ultimate way to show my gratitude, so I took over and started managing the company. However, about a year after taking on this role, I began noticing various issues within the company. If the problems were related to operations or systems, they would be easier to resolve. But the real issue lies with the people. What makes it worse is that the behavior of a department head, who is also a manager, has become a major source of concern, making the issue even more deeply rooted. His name is Kevin. Kevin's attitude toward work is blatantly unacceptable. According to reports from other employees, it seems he spends a significant portion of his working hours on side gigs. Chris, I'm heading to the post office for a bit. Since Kevin is in his 40s and older than me, he has spoken to me in a condescending manner since I first became CEO. Going to the post office is rarely part of his job, so I stopped him. Thanks for your hard work. By the way, what do you need to do at the post office? Kevin made an obviously annoyed face in response to my question. Come on, there's nothing strange about going to the post office while working. I need to make a payment, and today's the due date. With that, he grabbed a large package and tried to leave the office. However, our company does not use ATMs or in-person banking for transactions. All payments are handled through online banking. Additionally, tasks like these are typically managed by accounting or sales, not Kevin. His explanation didn't sit well with me. We use online transfers, don't we? And what's in that package? Are you delivering something to a client? I stopped him again, and he frowned, speaking quickly. The other party isn't familiar with the internet and only accepts in-person transactions at the counter. Besides, stepping out of the office now and then is a good way to refresh and boost work efficiency. As for the package, it's personal stuff, and I'm just dropping it off at my car. Seriously, Chris, you're watching employees like a hawk. It's uncomfortable. With that, Kevin kicked the office door open and hurried out. According to other employees, Kevin's main side, hustle, seems to be reselling goods. Our company doesn't place restrictions on having side jobs, so as long as there's no risk of leaking company information or causing harm to the business, it's not an issue. However, this policy applies only outside of working hours. Since he's paid to work during office hours, he's obligated to focus on company tasks. If Kevin is indeed using work hours for his side business, it's a significant issue. After questioning him this much today, I want to believe he isn't actually running errands for his reselling business at the post office. However, if more reports come in from employees, I'll need to conduct a thorough investigation. It's disappointing that someone in a management position, responsible for guiding and educating employees, is under suspicion like this. I'll need to keep a close eye on Kevin's behavior going forward, even as I focused on my own work. I want to focus on my work, but I keep receiving worrying reports from employees. We use employee dues to stock snacks and coffee, but the dues are depleting unusually fast. The coffee beans, which are ground and brewed by a machine, are being used up at twice the normal rate, and snacks have been disappearing by the box. Once, a large amount of snacks I replenished with my own money vanished within a day. Finding it odd, I put up a notice to address the issue, but there's been no change. On top of that, Betty, who handles accounting, approached me for advice. It's about Kevin. His expense reports are blatantly improper. He's been submitting claims for what seem to be private drinking parties and family meals. Can you do something about it? Betty looked at me with a troubled expression, seeking my help. She's an exceptionally talented employee with both a law degree and a CPA certification. I had heard that, like me, she had been truant during high school and spent her time at home studying. Her determination to prove herself to former classmates, who once made her life difficult, had driven her to excel, and I found her incredibly strong. I've witnessed Kevin, who only sees the surface of her past truancy, mocking her on multiple occasions. Each time, I've reprimanded him. As you said, she's a bit emotionally fragile, so I shouldn't be too harsh with her, Kevin would say, but then he'd make completely off-the-mark comments like that again, even though he's nearly the same age. I deeply respect Betty for her incredible skills and determination, yet there she was, speaking with a somber expression. Actually, I saw Kevin taking office supplies improperly quite a while ago. I discreetly warned him, but it seems he's still doing it. As someone older and often bossy, Kevin likely intimidates Betty, making it hard for her to stand up to him. While we were discussing this in the break room, Mike came in to make coffee. He's around my age and has experience running his own business, contributing to our company in marketing and sales. Though his previous company didn't succeed, his experiences have been invaluable, and he consistently brings great ideas to the table. Being one of the founding members from when my dad started the company, Mike has the longest tenure here and knows the company inside and out. It wouldn't be an exaggeration to say that the company runs smoothly even with me as CEO because of him. Both Betty and Mike are truly outstanding individuals. Having overheard our conversation, Mike chimed in. Betty, I think you should let Chris know about that matter as well. It's not good to carry the burden alone, and this is a problem for the organization. With tears in her eyes, Betty slowly began to open up. She revealed that Kevin had been persistently asking her out for meals recently. At first, she agreed, but it became clear that he had ulterior motives. Kevin has a family, and more importantly, Betty feels genuinely afraid. Although Betty is well-versed in legal matters and knows how to handle this, it's difficult for her to act decisively when she's the one directly involved. She also genuinely likes working here and wants to avoid leaving or feeling uncomfortable in the workplace. Knowing how much she values the company, I was even more determined to ensure she wouldn't have to endure any more unpleasant experiences. Mike seemed to feel the same way, and in an unusually firm tone, he said to me, "If this is true, there's no reason Betty should have to endure this. I think this is serious enough to consider disciplinary action." I completely agreed with Mike's opinion. We'll also need to prepare to form an investigation committee. I'll act on this soon. Please let me know immediately if anything else comes up. As we were discussing this, Kevin suddenly appeared in the break room. How can you stand chatting in such a cramped space? I want to make coffee, so can you move? Kevin waved his hand dismissively at me, and though I found it annoying, I stepped aside. From the way he spoke, it seemed he hadn't overheard our conversation. After making his coffee, Kevin grabbed a handful of snacks from a nearby table and started to leave. Mike called out to him, "Kevin, if you take that many snacks, no one else will get any. Those are my favorites, you know." Mike said it in a light-hearted, joking tone, so Kevin didn't take offense and even smiled. Mike is not only good at his job, but also has a knack for communicating without causing friction, which is likely why he's so successful in sales. I found myself impressed. "Oh, so you like these? I'll bring some for you next time, so look forward to it." With that, Kevin left, still carrying a large amount of snacks. Betty sighed as she watched him leave. Kevin's so stingy. There's no way he's bringing snacks for anyone. Seeing the dynamics in the office left me feeling heavy-hearted. Creating a comfortable work environment for employees is part of my responsibility as a leader. With a sense of what I needed to do next, I left the break room. The following day, another issue landed on my desk as soon as I arrived at work. Kevin barged into my office. "Ever since you became CEO, my salary hasn't gone up at all. Care to explain why that is?" Over the past year or so, I've gained a clearer picture of the company's operations, but I can't say Kevin's performance has been impressive. On the contrary, he's been implicated in misappropriating supplies, working on side gigs during office hours, and causing other employees to come to me with personal complaints about him. Kevin likely has no idea about any of this, but he also seems unaware of how poorly he's performing at work. It's frustrating that someone who hardly puts in any effort is demanding a raise. Still, I couldn't say this to his face, so I chose my words carefully to make my point. Growing the company means improving employee satisfaction and attracting top talent. I'm fully committed to investing in our people, so you'll see the benefits. Please continue to work hard. I'm counting on you. As much as I wanted to confront Kevin with reality, it would be premature to assume he's at fault before all the facts are clear. Kevin didn't like my response and became even more agitated. "If you value talent, you should raise my salary immediately. Otherwise, skilled people like me will leave for better opportunities. It's easier than ever to switch jobs these days." It was clearly meant to be a threat, but it only left me feeling annoyed rather than worried. I made sure my frustration didn't show on my face and responded with a smile. "I understand your point. However, a company must be sustainable to thrive. Increasing labor costs with the current profits wouldn't be a wise move." At this, Kevin slammed his hand on the desk and gave me a menacing grin. "Got it. That's your answer, right? Done crying later." Without another word, he turned his back and stormed out of the office, slamming the door behind him. Later that evening, when I returned from an outing, I found a stack of envelopes on my desk. Curious, I picked them up. Each envelope was labeled "Resignation Letter." There were about 30 envelopes in total. The idea that so many employees would resign at once is unheard of in a normal company. When I looked up, I realized Kevin had slipped back into the office without me noticing. Grinning smugly, he announced, "If you are the CEO, we're all quitting. This company's done for." So that's what this is about. Previously, when he came to negotiate a raise and I rejected his demands, he left with a parting remark like, "You'll regret this." Having an employee attempt to incite rebellion is, in some ways, a failure on my part. However, this was an important matter, so I made sure to confirm with Kevin. "Kevin, just to clarify, you're saying you intend to resign from the company, correct?" Kevin laughed loudly, clutching his stomach. "That's exactly what I'm saying. You won't raise my salary, so I've got no choice. It's the era where talented people leave boring companies behind." Hearing this, I looked him straight in the eye and said, "Thank you. That's a big help. I'll proceed with the necessary paperwork." "What?" Kevin's face contorted in confusion as he let out an incredulous noise. He had no idea that truths inconvenient to him were about to come to light. "What's that supposed to mean? Bluff all you want, but it's useless. After all, the core members of this company, including Mike and Betty, are leaving with me." Though I knew this wasn't true, I didn't bother denying it outright. Instead, I began revealing the facts to Kevin bit by bit. "I acknowledge your resignation, but will be in touch with you several times regarding follow-up matters. Just so you're aware, you likely won't be receiving any severance pay. I wanted to let you know in advance since you'll need to plan for your future." Kevin's eyes widened in shock. "Hey, what kind of nonsense is that? The company employed me, so you can't treat me differently from the others for resigning." At that moment, Mike and Betty walked into the office. Betty was the first to speak. "That would only apply if you had been working as diligently as the others. Unfortunately, we've already gathered enough evidence of your misconduct, and you'll need to make amends for that." Kevin looked back and forth between Mike and Betty, his voice trembling. "What's gotten into you all of a sudden? Aren't you two leaving with me? You promised to quit this company and work as employees at the company I'm starting." Betty and Mike exchanged glances, and Mike let out a sigh before responding in an exasperated tone. "We said we would follow you, sure. We said it sounded fun. But starting a company isn't that easy. Someone who can't even earn the trust of their colleagues isn't likely to succeed. There's no way we're boarding a sinking ship we already know is doomed." Mike's words were harsh, but they carried weight coming from someone with first-hand experience in starting a business. It was clear that he, better than anyone, understood the challenges and risks involved, and he instinctively knew Kevin wasn't capable of succeeding. Mike continued, "By the way, in the company you're planning to start, would you turn a blind eye to employees working side gigs during office hours? If so, maybe I'll join your company while still working here. You know, I've already informed Chris about how you've been spending work hours reselling items." Hearing this, Kevin visibly panicked. "How do you know about that?" "No, you've got it all wrong. I'm not doing any side gigs." Kevin desperately tried to cover it up, but Mike wasn't letting it go. "Then why do you frequently go to the post office to ship packages? You often say you're going there to make payments, but there's no record of any transactions. I even followed you to the post office once to check things out. You see, I have connections at the post office and could have just asked, but I wanted to see for myself." Hearing this, Kevin stiffened and lashed out in defiance. "You were sneaking around and following me? That's cowardly. Besides, it's the fault of management for paying me so little. I have a family to support. I had no choice." Kevin was being paid well above the average salary. If he truly couldn't manage to support his family, it was either a blatant lie or a sign of poor financial management. As Kevin made excuses that didn't hold water, Betty stepped in to press him further. "So, is that why you submitted fraudulent expense claims? Claiming family meals as business expenses and submitting receipts for personal purchases. Those have all been verified." At Betty's words, Kevin turned pale and began sweating. His reaction made it clear that her accusations were true. Betty continued, her tone icy. "By the way, do you recognize this old printer sitting here in the CEO's office? I bought it through a marketplace app." Kevin's eyes widened in horror as he looked at where Betty was pointing. "No way," he muttered, covering his mouth with his hand. "You've been stealing company equipment and selling it on the marketplace app, haven't you? The model numbers match, and some of the items still have the company's property management stickers on them. Your recent marketplace sales have been doing well, haven't they? That's because I bought a lot of them myself." Betty stepped closer to the trembling Kevin and spoke in a chillingly calm voice. "Embezzlement in the workplace that could get you up to 10 years in prison. And as for all those times you mocked me for being a dropout, that constitutes defamation, punishable by up to a year in prison, a fine of up to $33,000 or both. Slander carries a penalty of up to 3 years in prison or a fine of up to $5,000. Please, forgive me," Kevin pleaded desperately. Ignoring Kevin's desperate plea, Betty fixed him with an icy glare. "And let's not forget, you threatened me into going to a bar even after I refused, didn't you? I'll never forget what happened there. Be aware that such actions fall under the crime of non-consensual indecent conduct, which carries a sentence of 6 months to 10 years in prison. Be prepared for the consequences. Kevin, seeming to resign himself to his fate, collapsed at his knees in defeat. Looking up at me, he muttered in a trembling voice, "So, you knew they weren't going to quit. At this rate, no one else will leave and follow me either." Feeling a mix of pity and resolve, I shared my honest thoughts with Kevin. I'm not so arrogant as to think I'm a perfect leader, so I didn't immediately assume the resignation letters were fake. But all the envelopes had the exact same handwriting. That struck me as odd. When I first saw the resignation letters, I almost blamed myself, thinking it might be an outburst of dissatisfaction toward me or the company. However, the moment I noticed that all the envelopes had the same handwriting, I began to suspect it was a scheme orchestrated by one person. Then Kevin suddenly announced that he was leaving with a group of employees, turning my suspicion into near certainty, which led us to this point. Either way, you can no longer stay with this company. Pack your belongings and leave by the end of the day. We'll contact you about what comes next. Thanks for everything up to now. With those words, Kevin silently left the CEO's office. As the investigation continued, it became clear that Kevin had committed even more offenses. The most serious issue was the leak of customer data. Evidence was emerging that he had sold personal information from the company's database to outside vendors for significant sums of money. The list of Kevin's violations was extensive, and thoroughly compiling evidence and pursuing legal action would take time. His side hustle reselling items had completely stalled since Betty, his main buyer, stopped purchasing from him. Betty had only bought the items as part of the investigation, and Kevin would be required to repay more than he earned once his charges were finalized. It was reported that Kevin sold his newly built house and was now living alone in a small apartment. It seemed even his family had abandoned him. I didn't know how he would manage from here, but I could only hope he would reform and live a better life. As for me, I was working with my talented team to expand the business, using my experience from Poor people don't belong here, according to Thomas, the department director. I became furious when my wife, Eleanor, came home from the company's year-end celebration crying. I couldn't contain my rage, so I quickly reached for my phone and called the number Eleanor had provided for Thomas. "This is David. Eleanor, my wife, is employed by your business. What did that have to do with the recent year-end party?" "Oh, so you're that woman's husband. I heard you say she didn't belong there and called her poor. What were you contemplating? Give an explanation." "Listen, man, someone as poor as her shouldn't even be at our company in the first place." Something inside of me suddenly broke at that same instant. "Get President Clark here now." After a moment of stillness, Thomas burst out laughing dryly. "Hey, would you like me to give Mr. Clark a call? Who are you, in your opinion? You're giving me commands even though you have no idea how big our firm is." Thomas kept making fun of my wife and me, but he had no idea how much he would come to regret his behavior. I'm 42 years old, and my name is David Nolan. I have been employed in the real estate sector for the last 20 years. In a way, the high-stakes negotiations and tension that characterize this industry fit my nature. But despite my intense focus on my profession, I always felt empty within. Time just kept going by, and I had no idea what was causing it. About 3 years ago, I walked by a little confectionery shop in between jobs to meet my wife, Eleanor. I was greeted by the somewhat sweet scent that tickled my nose as soon as I passed through the curtain. The showcase was lined with neatly organized candies, and a woman was working diligently behind the counter. Eleanor was that person. I was unable to look away from her as soon as I saw her. She exuded warmth and nostalgia in her light green kimono, which fit her perfectly. I found myself visiting her store whenever I had the opportunity after that day. Even though our chats were brief and unimportant, I began to value them. Her happy smiles gave me the impression that color was gradually making a comeback in my life. As time went on, I ultimately decided to come clean about my feelings. "Would you like to grab dinner with me sometime after work?" She was silent for a moment when I asked her that. Then she smiled, a little shyly, and said, "Yes." That day undoubtedly turned into one of my life's most memorable experiences. We gradually came to know one another as we began dating. I found out that her family actually owned the candy store where she worked. After her father, a talented artisan, became very ill, they'd briefly contemplated closing the store. But the company was able to bounce back because one of his apprentices took charge. Fortunately, her father's health has not changed, and he is currently retired. But Eleanor always listened to me honestly, even if I didn't have much to say outside of my work. We eventually got married last year after growing closer. We started our new life together with the blessings of our family. However, we encountered unforeseen difficulties shortly after getting married. After our marriage, Eleanor started working as a sales associate at Juno Real Estate. It was actually my conversations about work that sparked her interest in the real estate industry. And one day, she said she wanted to try working in the field herself. Since her family's confectionery shop had other staff to handle sales, her leaving wouldn't affect the business. I couldn't bring myself to stop her from pursuing something she was genuinely interested in. So I respected her decision and supported her in finding a job. However, her new career path was far from smooth. It happened on her very first day at work. While Eleanor was organizing training materials at the Juno Real Estate office, she suddenly heard a voice from behind. "Hey, you! You're that confectionery shop girl, Eleanor, right?" Startled, she turned around to see Thomas, the head of the sales department, standing there. He was Eleanor's direct boss. A faint smirk appeared on Thomas's face for some reason. "Yes, that's me. But how do you know my name? You don't remember? It's me, Thomas. We were in middle school together." "Man, I'm surprised. I never thought a poor girl like you would end up working at the same company as me." With those words, a bitter memory that Eleanor had long suppressed came rushing back. Thomas was the very person who had relentlessly bullied her in middle school. Back then, when Eleanor's father fell ill and their family business struggled, Thomas had mocked her, calling her poor. Eleanor felt her body tense up, but she steadied herself and responded firmly. "I am now a sales associate at Juno Real Estate. The past has nothing to do with this." "Oh, so you finally learned to talk back? But you don't have to push yourself too hard. No matter how much someone like you tries, you'll never make it to the top. There's no need for your concern. I will simply do my job as I should. Excuse me." Eleanor picked up the documents and stood up, preparing to leave, but Thomas's voice stabbed at her back once more. "Oh, come on. Running away again? Just like in middle school? Are you going to hide and cry again? But this time, no one's going to comfort an old woman like you." "I don't cry anymore, and I won't be broken by your harassment." "Well, do your best then. Let's see how far you can go under my command." Without turning back, Eleanor headed straight for the conference room. She focused on her work, trying to shake off Thomas's words that kept echoing in her mind. From that point on, Thomas began harassing Eleanor in increasingly childish ways. One example was what happened on a certain day. Thomas tossed the contract documents Eleanor had submitted onto her desk as if they were worthless. "Redo this." Startled, Eleanor looked up at him. She had double-checked that document multiple times. There was no way it had any obvious mistakes. "What's wrong with it?" "Right here. The stamp is slightly tilted." "You're rejecting it for that. That doesn't affect the contract at all." "Even if it doesn't affect the contract, work is about striving for perfection, isn't it? That kind of sloppy attitude is ingrained in you." Then, with a smirk, Thomas raised his voice so the other employees could hear. "You really haven't changed since middle school. Always careless to the end. Anger boiled inside Eleanor, but under the weight of her co-workers' gazes, she held it back. She picked up the document and took a deep breath. Understood. I'll correct it. But from now on, please only point out actual errors. Oh, wasn't that clear enough? It doesn't matter what you think. If I say it's wrong, it's wrong. Just as Eleanor tried to de-escalate the situation, Thomas pressed on. Actually, the biggest issue here is that you're too slow. You're causing problems for everyone. I'm causing problems. Yeah, because of you, my schedule keeps getting messed up. It's about time you realize that. Eleanor could no longer hold back and glared at Thomas. Then let me ask you this. Why is it that you process everyone else's documents quickly, but mine are always pushed to the back? Isn't that the real reason things are delayed? Oh, do you have proof? Or is that just your imagination? I don't have proof, but I can clearly feel that I'm being treated unfairly. Feeling it doesn't mean anything. This is the real world. If you have a problem, prove it with results. At Thomas's sneering words, Eleanor was left speechless. Her co-workers kept their heads down, focused on their own work, avoiding eye contact. Understood. Then I'll prove it to you with results. With that, Eleanor picked up her documents and returned to her desk. Instead of lashing out in anger, she vowed to get back at him through her work. Despite Thomas's relentless harassment, Eleanor held her head high. But then, an incident occurred that finally broke her spirit. It was the night of the company's year-end party, Eleanor's first since joining the company. Since it was a relatively large gathering, held in collaboration with other departments, she had been looking forward to it for days, seeing it as a great opportunity to bond with her colleagues. But Thomas wouldn't allow that. Hey, get this done by the end of the day. Just before the end of business hours, Thomas dropped a thick stack of documents onto Eleanor's desk. Around her, other employees were already standing up, preparing to head to the venue. Wait, but this isn't an urgent matter, is it? And tonight is the year-end party. Whether it's urgent or not isn't for you to decide. If you want to attend the party, just finish your work quickly. Well, if you had the same level of competence as everyone else, you might just make it before the party ends. With that, Thomas glanced exaggeratedly at his watch before walking away. Left with no choice, Eleanor stayed behind to finish the work and then rushed to the party venue alone. By the time she arrived, the event was already in full swing. Laughter and chatter filled the air, yet Eleanor stood frozen at the entrance. Her name was nowhere to be found on the seating chart. Just then, Thomas approached, a beer mug in hand. Seeing her confusion, he smirked, clearly enjoying himself. Hey, why are you just standing there? Thomas, I can't seem to find my seat. Of course not. You never had one to begin with. What? Eleanor was left speechless, but Thomas wasn't done. Poor people don't belong here. Just go home already. At that moment, past memories flooded Eleanor's mind. Back in middle school, during the post-festival celebration, Thomas had humiliated her the same way, mocking her and isolating her from the group. His cruel words, his sneering laughter, the pitiful glances from her classmates, everything came rushing back. A wave of frustration and humiliation overwhelmed her, and tears threatened to spill from her eyes. Excuse me. That was all she managed to say before turning on her heels and leaving the venue. Within 5 minutes, she went straight home and told me everything. The bullying she had endured from Thomas in middle school. The way he had targeted her ever since she was assigned to his department. How she had been unable to confide in me because she was the one who had chosen this job. And finally, the humiliating treatment she had just suffered at the party. Thomas said poor people don't belong there. As I watched Eleanor speak through her tears, rage boiled within me. I was furious at Thomas for treating my wife this way. But more than that, I was enraged at myself for not realizing how much she had been suffering. How despicable could one man be? How dare he humiliate my wife like this? I had reached my limit. I immediately grabbed my phone and dialed the number Eleanor had given me. Hello, this is Thomas. His voice came through the phone, loose and relaxed, no doubt due to the alcohol. I spoke in a low, steady voice. This is David. My wife, Eleanor, works at your company. Care to explain what happened at the year-end party just now? Oh, Eleanor. So you're her husband. Huh. Never thought you'd actually call me over something like this. I could hear Thomas's laughter. His condescending attitude only fueled my anger even more. I heard you called her poor and told her she didn't belong there. I also know you've been harassing her on a daily basis. She's not working there to be subjected to your pathetic bullying. Explain yourself. Whoa, no need to get all worked up. If she's unhappy, maybe it's because her husband isn't man enough to provide for her. Why are you even letting your wife work? What are you doing with your life? What did you just say? Let's be real here. Someone as poor as her doesn't belong in our company to begin with. Poor folks like you should just stick to selling sweets in the countryside. Oh, wait. Didn't that filthy little shop shut down already? At that moment, something inside me completely snapped. He insulted even her family's business. That was something I could never forgive. Get President Clark here. Now. For a moment, silence filled the other end of the call. He must have been caught off guard by my words. Then I heard Thomas's dry laughter. Ta, you want me to call Mr. Clark? Who do you think you are? You don't even know the size of this company, and yet you're barking orders at me. I know Geno Real Estate very well because I'm the president of its parent company, Geno Partners. What? Had? You're the president of Geno Partners. At that moment, Thomas's voice completely faltered. Even through the phone, I could tell that his drunken haze had vanished in an instant. Eleanor wanted to gain first-hand experience in the field, so I had her work at Geno Real Estate. Eventually, I planned to have her assist with management at Geno Partners, but I never imagined things would turn out like this. I'm truly disappointed. Thomas, wait. This has to be a joke, right? You? A president? His voice was now filled with unmistakable panic, but I pressed on. Call Mr. Clark right now and tell him to come to my house. He knows where it is. We're going to go over everything you've done. Understood? Oh. Well, I mean. Don't even think about running. If he doesn't show up before midnight, I'll come to you myself. With that, I ended the call. Even as I put down the phone, my hands were still shaking with rage. I took a deep breath, trying to calm myself. Less than an hour later, the doorbell rang. When I opened the door, there stood Thomas, his face pale, alongside Mr. Clark. I sincerely apologize for disturbing you this late. I'm truly sorry. The moment the door opened, Thomas bowed deeply. Behind him, Mr. Clark also lowered his head. Mr. Nolan, I deeply regret what has happened. As soon as I heard what Thomas had done, I brought him here immediately. Come in. I gave them a short command, and the two hesitantly stepped inside. Leading them into the living room, I sat down on the sofa. Eleanor sat beside me, her gaze downcast, saying nothing. A heavy silence filled the room until Thomas finally spoke. Mr. Nolan, Eleanor, I sincerely apologize. My immaturity led to all of this. Immaturity. Tell me exactly what you're apologizing for. Well, my remarks at the year-end party, for example. I may have been a bit careless. A bit. I glared at Thomas, my anger sharp and unwavering. You think the harassment you put my wife through can be dismissed as mere carelessness. Unable to respond, Thomas bit his lip, and Mr. Clark interjected. Mr. Nolan, I want to personally apologize once again. What Thomas did is absolutely inexcusable. Ultimately, the responsibility lies with me. That's right. And now you're going to take responsibility. I shifted my gaze away from them and turned to Eleanor. Eleanor, can you tell them in detail what kind of harassment you endured? Yes. My work was deliberately pushed to the back, and my documents were rejected for reasons that weren't even real mistakes. And today, I was the only one forced to stay late with extra work. When I finally arrived at the year-end party, there was no seat prepared for me, and he told me that poor people don't belong there. As she spoke, I noticed Mr. Clark's expression grow noticeably darker. He must have realized that what he'd have been told before coming here didn't match the reality of the situation. Thomas, didn't you tell me there was just a mistake in the seating arrangement? Oh, well, that's a mistake. You told her straight up that her seat wasn't prepared, and that poor people don't belong here. Isn't that right? Udge. Thomas finally had nothing left to say. Seizing the moment, I turned to Mr. Clark. Mr. Clark, don't you think it's inappropriate for someone like him to be in a managerial position? Mr. Nolan, that's. Thomas only holds his position as department head because he's married to your daughter. Isn't that right? Yes. Thomas's wife was Mr. Clark's daughter. In other words, the two of them were family by marriage. Having hit a sore spot, Mr. Clark hesitated, swallowing his words. Favoring family members and placing them in high-ranking positions is your business. But have you ever considered how much unfair treatment the other employees have to endure because of it? You're absolutely right. Thomas will take full responsibility. I will ensure he undergoes thorough re-education, and I will also review the company's management system to prevent this from ever happening again. Thomas, his face drained of color, opened his mouth to protest, but President Clark shot him a sharp glare, making him fall silent. Just then, Eleanor, who had been sitting quietly beside me, spoke up in a small voice. There's one more thing I need to say. Eleanor, I think I need to talk about everything Thomas has done. Thomas shifted uneasily in his seat. Seeing his reaction, my anger flared up again. What exactly did he do? Actually, even outside of work, he kept persistently approaching me. Approaching you? Thomas, you did that too. No, that's not. Thomas frantically tried to defend himself, but before he could, Eleanor held her phone up to his face. This is the proof. I kept some of the emails he sent me. The screen was filled with countless emails from Thomas. Messages like, let's go out for a drink sometime, I won't tell your husband, and I've liked you since we were kids, jumped out at me. The words on the screen made my blood boil, and I clenched my fists. Thomas, what is this? It's just a misunderstanding. I only sent those because I wanted to get along as coworkers. You call this trying to get along as coworkers? I couldn't hold back my anger and shouted at him, making Thomas go silent. Mr. Clark looked at the messages, his face growing darker. Thomas, this is completely unacceptable. And aren't you a married man? I'm sorry. It was just a harmless thing, I swear. But Eleanor wasn't finished. And that's not all. I want to talk about what happened in middle school, too. Tom's face paled even further. His eyes darted around, searching for a way out, but Eleanor pressed on. Back in middle school, Thomas confessed his feelings to me, but I turned him down, and that's when the bullying started. Thomas, you did that? And no, that's not. Thomas tried to deny it, but Eleanor didn't stop. After I rejected him, he started spreading rumors about my family's financial situation. He encouraged our classmates to call me poor and publicly humiliated me in class. All of it started after I turned him down. Is that true? I glared at Thomas. His face was now completely pale, and sweat dripped down his forehead. We were kids. I wasn't thinking. We're kids. You're still doing the same thing now. What's your excuse for that, Thomas? You have no defense. Not only have you violated company policies, but you lack even basic human decency. Thomas suddenly stood up and bowed deeply before us, Please. I swear, I'll never do anything like this again. Please, just this once, give me another chance. But neither I nor Mr. Clark had any intention of granting him mercy. Ignoring Thomas, I turned to Mr. Clark. Mr. Clark, I'll leave the decision of how to handle this man up to you. However, if you choose to keep him in his current position, then as the parent company, we will have no choice but to restructure Geno Real Estate ourselves. Mr. Clark nodded. Mr. Nolan, you're absolutely right. Thomas will face strict disciplinary action. In addition to his demotion, we will conduct a thorough investigation into his actions and implement measures to prevent this from happening again. I ask for your understanding on this matter. Instead of accepting this outright, I turned to Thomas and coldly said, "Never show your face in front of me again. And stay away from Eleanor, too." Once the discussion was over and the two of them left, Eleanor quietly leaned against me. I took her trembling hand in mine, looked her in the eyes, and made a promise. It's over now. No matter what he tries, I will always protect you. Eleanor nodded slightly, finally regaining her calm expression. A few days after the year-end party, a decision was made regarding Thomas's punishment. He was officially demoted and reassigned. His actions were deemed unacceptable both in terms of company policy and ethical standards. Even Mr. Clark, despite Thomas being his son-in-law, realized there was no way to defend him. Thomas was reassigned to Geno Group's Customer Service Center. There, his main responsibility was handling customer complaints related to real estate. Going from a position where he gave orders to one where he had to absorb the frustration and anger of clients must have been nothing short of humiliating for him. Sending me to a place like this. My father-in-law really went too far this time, he grumbled. Even as he complained, Thomas showed no sign of genuine remorse. Instead, his arrogance remained, and his customer service skills were atrocious. Yeah, I get it. But honestly, isn't it your own fault for not reading the contract properly? He would snap at frustrated clients over the phone, then slam the receiver down. His colleagues were dumbfounded by his behavior, and as expected, his poor handling of customers led to even bigger complaints. But the trouble didn't end there. Thomas's selfish actions began to negatively impact his coworkers as well. He pushed his work onto others and refused to take responsibility for his mistakes. As a result, overall morale in the workplace declined, and the customer service center's performance suffered. Thomas, do you even care about this job? We're all exhausted from covering for you. Eventually, even his colleagues turned against him, leaving him increasingly isolated. Those who remembered his time as a department head all muttered the same thing. He brought this on himself. Meanwhile, in his personal life, another disaster struck. His wife, Mr. Clark's daughter, filed for divorce. "I can't do this anymore. Just looking at you makes me sick." She told him this after learning about the harassment Eleanor had endured in middle school. It seemed that Eleanor's experience with Thomas was eerily similar to her own past. In fact, she had also been bullied by classmates during her school years and had even stopped attending school for a time because of it. Her hatred toward perpetrators of harassment was especially strong. "The fact that I was married to someone like you, I'll never forgive myself for it." At first, Thomas desperately tried to talk her out of it, but her resolve was firm. In the end, the divorce was finalized. "I didn't do anything wrong. I just went a little too far, that's all." Even then, Thomas refused to acknowledge his mistakes. But having lost both his position and his family, he found himself increasingly cornered. His troubles didn't end there. He continued to cause problems with his poor handling of customer complaints at the service center. Eventually, dissatisfaction among his colleagues reached a breaking point, and he was forced to resign. As he left the company, Thomas sneered, "I'm done with this pathetic job." But the road ahead of him was anything but easy. An internal investigation within Geno Group widely exposed Thomas's misconduct, and his reputation as someone to avoid spread, not only within the company, but throughout the entire real estate industry. With every attempt at reemployment being rejected, he gradually fell into despair, resorting to drinking cheap liquor in the middle of the day. At first, he tried to maintain appearances, but as his money ran out, the man who once wore tailored suits was now reduced to slumping in the corner of a bar, dressed in filthy sweatpants. According to someone who recently saw Thomas, he was clutching a liquor bottle, muttering, "I can't believe this happened to me. It's all their fault," over and over again. But now there was no one left who cared to listen. As for Eleanor, after a year of gaining hands-on experience at Juno Real Estate, she formally joined Juno Partners, the parent company specializing in real estate investment. Always eager to learn, she now used her first-hand knowledge and experience to assist in running my company. Her insights, shaped by her time working as a sales associate, provided invaluable perspectives, even for me. "David, I think I finally understand what we were missing. Let me put together a proposal based on this data." She smiled as she spoke, looking completely at home in the Juno Partners conference room. Her dedication and integrity earned the trust of her colleagues, and she is now frequently entrusted with leading projects. For me, seeing my wife thrive in the workplace fills me with pride. Eleanor has become an indispensable presence, both in my life and in the company. Together, we will continue taking on new challenges, side by side. Director Higgins abruptly called for me while I was cleaning my desk. I had considered leaving without saying anything more, but I grudgingly went to her office after she called. Then, she revealed something shocking. "Mr. Incompetent, take over the $15 million deal." Above all else, I wanted to stop being controlled by her. Furthermore, it appeared strange to give such a large project to a worker who was almost fired. I no longer tolerate Director Hayden's capricious decision-making, even if her father is the EVP. "Can I see the documents?" I asked her when I made up my mind. She smugly handed over the documents, mistaking my intention. I flipped through and verified my suspicions. The person responsible for that document already had my name in the column. The date, though, was from a few months prior to the announcement of my termination. Why now was she bringing up this deal? I spoke up strongly, understanding her goals. "You've expressly named me, therefore it's impossible. I'll excuse myself since I'm getting fired. Kevin Johnson is my name. I work for the corporation and am in my late 50s. It felt odd to realize that more than half of my life had already gone by when I started working for this company as a recent graduate. Moments seemed to have flown by at the same moment. I enjoyed my days as a salesperson in the beverage manufacturer's sales department. Nevertheless, the sales department was split into sales and marketing as the business grew. I am currently in marketing, where I was assigned. The division that develops strategies to sell goods is called marketing. Marketing concentrates on marketing to the market as opposed to sales, which deals directly with contracts. Marketing must comprehend the behavior of new clients and develop commercial plans, whereas sales interacts with existing customers. I was initially perplexed by the discrepancy, but I was really pleased when our carefully thought out and detailed plans worked. Some, however, did not sell at all, while others unanticipatedly struck a different target demographic, regardless of how much I studied the industry and advertised my products. Over time, the intricacy of marketing captivated me. Despite my advanced age, as a senior member of the department, I have always made an effort to interact as much as possible with the younger staff members. They have come to speak candidly and amiably with me. I really value the relaxed and open environment where everyone is free to express their thoughts. Indeed, the young employees' perspectives are vital. Their quick grasp of trends through social media is impressive. Something becomes incredibly popular one moment, and then suddenly, no one talks about it anymore. Keeping up with the rapid changes and trends is a tough task at my age, but it's part of the job. An alien who's an incomprehensible enemy can become a helpful informant once they're on your side. Kevin. A young male employee approached me. "What's up?" I asked. "Our competitor company had a major blunder online yesterday." "Really? What happened?" I tried to keep up with the news, but I often missed smaller stories. "Seems like they messed up with their tagline," he explained, showing me the trending post. Really? "Yeah, I saw this yesterday. This is a no-go. It's outdated, not something that would trend nowadays." As I was talking, another female employee happened to pass by and join our conversation. "So it's a no." "Yo, definitely a no," the two of them agreed, nodding. That was a close call. We were actually considering going in that direction with our project. Guess we should drop it then. I had decided to change the tagline of the project I was working on. It was better to go through that hassle than to face a public backlash. That's a good idea. It'll definitely cause a stir. Lately, these kinds of things have received much negative attention. It's better to avoid them, I think. Thanks to everyone, from the juniors to the mid-level employees, who openly shared their opinions, our marketing department had been working in a great atmosphere without major mistakes. However, this harmonious work environment was about to change due to the personnel reassignment. Every year, our company undergoes staff reassignments, and this time was no exception, with significant changes. A woman in her 30s replaced our easygoing and always smiling director, who had been watching over us. Lisa Higgins was somewhat of a celebrity. Rumors were that she got into the company through connections as the daughter of the EVP and had been doing whatever she pleased in various departments. In fact, she was known to favor and be kind to those who praised her, but would ruthlessly push out anyone who disagreed or challenged her. Since the announcement, I feared what would become of our department, filled with people who always speak their minds. My bad feeling turned out to be spot on. To get approval for a certain project, I went to see Director Higgins, my boss. This project was the result of meticulous discussions with the staff, considering the opinions of the sales team, and finally coming together. We all felt confident in it and were just waiting for the go-ahead to start production. She glanced through the project proposal and carelessly tossed it aside. "What is this? It's completely no good. Could you please specify what's wrong?" Interpreting my insistence as defiance, Director Higgins glared at me sharply. "A bad project is just that, bad. Redo it. Could you please advise me on which side I should start redoing it?" I asked, confused. Her response was cold and blunt. "I said the whole thing. This project is rejected." "Wait, please. Can we at least discuss the content of it more?" I pleaded, but she ignored me and walked out of her office. I had to tell everyone about getting a negative response from Director Higgins, and we set up a new project meeting. Since we had a fair amount of confidence in the previous project, the mood in the meeting room was gloomy. In the midst of this, a cheerful voice rang out. "What's with the glum faces, everyone? I've come up with a great idea." The plan she proposed was so outrageous that it was doubtful any market research had been done. Even a fresh graduate could come up with something better. We all sat stunned, listening to Director Higgins' presentation. After a while, a young male employee hesitantly raised his hand. "Sorry, but what are the persona settings for this project?" "Persona? What's that?" "I'm talking right now, so no need for your unnecessary input," she retorted and returned to her presentation. Persona, a basic marketing term, refers to a detailed and concrete image of a customer. It was evident she didn't know this. While listening to the poor presentation, everyone quietly exchanged glances. The team was confused. When she finished and asked if there were any questions, I raised my hand after some thought and spoke up clearly. "Sorry, Director, but we can't go forward with this project." Her demeanor changed instantly. "What do you mean?" "To be honest, this project is not viable as a marketing plan. Market research is crucial, And at this point, Director Higgins let out an exaggerated sigh. You don't get it. What don't I get? Your own position, she said coldly, looking down on me. What does that mean? I began, but Director Higgins interrupted before I could finish. You're fired. Don't bother coming in next month. Normally, a director couldn't just fire an employee on their own, but being a connection-based hire, she must have had some influence I couldn't contend with. And so, I was suddenly fired from the company I had served for over 30 years. Despite my confusion and sadness, there was no reversing the dismissal. Eventually, I decided to move on, using my remaining leave to search for a new job. I only had connections at my current workplace, but thanks to a friend who helped me out, it looked like I wouldn't miss my meals. At my age, my only concern was for the colleagues I was leaving behind. Regrettably, today was my last day. I had hoped to chat with everyone before leaving, but that didn't go as planned either. While I was tidying up my desk, Director Higgins suddenly called me. I was planning to resign without talking to her anymore, but since she summoned me, I reluctantly headed to her office. Then she dropped a bombshell. Mr. Incompetent, take over the $15 million deal. Confused about a handover on my last day, I asked her for clarification, only to hear an unbelievable response. I'll forget your firing ever happened, for now. So, can you start on this deal right away? Though having my dismissal reversed might seem positive, I already had another job lined up. I couldn't just ignore the arrangements made with my new employer. More than anything, I didn't want to be manipulated by her anymore. Handling a large project worth $15 million to an employee who was just fired was also somewhat strange. Even if Director Higgins' dad was the EVP, I couldn't stand her making arbitrary decisions like this anymore. I reached a decision and asked her, "Can I see the documents?" Mistaking my intent, she smugly handed them over. Flipping through, I confirmed what I had suspected. My name was already listed as the person in charge of that document. However, the date was from several months ago, before I was told I was being fired. Why was she bringing up this deal now? Understanding her intentions, I spoke up firmly. It's impossible. Since you specifically named me, and I'm being fired, I'll excuse myself. What? You're turning down a $15 million project? She exclaimed. Yes. To be precise, I can't accept it under your leadership. I'll be handling similar projects at my new job. What? At my words, Director Higgins stood up abruptly, making a loud noise. Her disheveled appearance was something I had never seen before. What do you mean? She demanded, slamming her hand on the desk. I sighed and began explaining. When I was fired, I first consulted a former colleague from sales. He was originally meant to join the marketing department, but chose to return to sales instead. Now, he was a sales director at another beverage company. I still went out for drinks with him and valued his advice as a senior in job transitions. He listened quietly to my story, then casually offered, "Why don't you join us?" Really? Is that okay? I was taken aback but grateful. He seemed to be on good terms with the HR director at his company and told me he would try to talk to him. Things moved quickly from there. I never expected to transition so smoothly at this stage of my career. I had secured a job at a competing beverage company, assigned to the marketing department. It felt like a stroke of luck. During my interview, the HR director asked me something. They wanted to know if I knew about a major project that had recently started. It was a much-discussed plan of forming a business alliance with a rival company. The money involved was substantial. Due to the alliance between rival companies, it was a hot topic in the industry, so I had heard about it. However, I didn't know the specific details. When I said so, the HR director looked puzzled. According to their records, I was involved in the project. Surprised, I instinctively said that couldn't be, but then it made sense. This project had indeed been officially brought to our company's attention. The project was initially addressed to me, but Director Higgins had covertly tried to take over, later deciding to let go when it became too much. Her attempted usurping was bad enough, but not seeing it through was worse. Her attitude towards work infuriated me. She had likely climbed to her position through power and by claiming others' achievements. Realizing how poorly she had handled the situation, I let out another deep sigh. Director Higgins, who had been listening to me, started trembling and then shouted, "That's unacceptable. You must take this project." "But even if you say that..." Frustrated that I had no intention of taking over, the director turned back to the staff and said, "Are you running away? If you leave, the remaining members will handle it. You are such a bastard for leaving your colleagues." Feeling like my colleagues, who had helped me so much, were being held hostage, I was lost for words. But then something happened. Everyone's attention was captured by a figure entering the office. He was a man dressed in a finely tailored suit, exuding a dignified aura. "That's enough, Lisa," he said. It was EVP Higgins, Director Higgins' dad. Director Higgins took a step back. She hadn't expected her dad to intervene. "Mr. Higgins." I was equally surprised. EVP Higgins was a man I rarely saw around the office. He rarely visited the marketing department, if ever. Despite knowing it was my last day, I hadn't expected him to come. "Sorry about this, Kevin. My daughter has caused you trouble," he said apologetically. "No, I never expected you to come," I responded. "Well, I do love my daughter. I've looked the other way until now, but I thought it was too much this time. I don't even know how to begin apologizing to you." Saying that, EVP Higgins politely apologized. "Please, no need to apologize. Why are you doing this for him, Dad?" Director Higgins' expression as she said this was filled with anxiety and seemed frightened. "You shouldn't say such a thing about Kevin. We were colleagues in sales," EVP Higgins corrected her firmly. I had a long-standing relationship with EVP Higgins from our sales days. Since he became an executive, we rarely saw each other inside the company, but he occasionally invited me for drinks. I had been in contact with him during my paid leave and had explained the whole situation regarding this incident. But Dad, I am this person's superior. Thinking you can do anything just because you're the boss is a grave mistake." EVP Higgins raised his voice, causing Director Higgins to visibly flinch. "Lisa, you've gone too far. You're an adult, a professional. I'm sorry, but you'll have to face the consequences, even as my daughter." "Wait, Dad. I haven't done anything wrong." Pale-faced, Director Higgins clung to her father. "I've been listening to you guys outside the room. Using your mood to dictate someone's career is unacceptable. You're not suited for leadership." "That's not true. I did well in my previous department," Director Higgins insisted, tears in her eyes. "You've always climbed the ladder by taking credit for others' work. That's not real work. It's time to stop playing house." "It's terrible to call it playing house. I was doing it properly." Despite Director Higgins' tearful plea, EVP Higgins turned his back on her, not listening. "I will report this matter to the president myself. It's my fault for letting it go this far. Kevin, I'm truly sorry for what happened. I hope you can fully utilize your abilities in your new position. I'm praying for your success. Thank you. If it's okay, I'd like to go out for drinks again." EVP Higgins smiled narrowly at my words, leaving Director Higgins in tears as he exited the marketing department. Not long after my resignation, Director Higgins' fate was also decided. She was demoted and transferred to a remote sales office, a clear case of being sidelined. EVP Higgins voluntarily offered to cut his own executive compensation. The marketing department team, as usual, was voicing their opinions freely and seemed fully engaged in their planning meetings. They appeared to be quite satisfied with their new boss, and the emails I occasionally received from them sounded cheerful. I hope they never forget that honesty and continue to have fulfilling days ahead. Kevin. Kevin. A young male employee approached me while I was looking at my PC. What's up? Check out this post. It's going viral. What? Which one are you talking about? This one. This one. He said, showing me his cell phone screen. Wow. So many comments. We did it. This will definitely be a topic of conversation. Reading through the numerous comments, I couldn't help but strike a victory pose. This photo came out great too. The male employee chuckled at my words. What? What's funny? No, it's just, I always forget because you talk so casually, but there's quite an age difference between you and me, Kevin. I just felt a bit of a generation gap there. Where? What part? In my flustered state, he dropped a cold one-liner. That's a secret. Why? Tell me. Can't do that. The male employee grinned and walked back to his desk. What's that all about? I muttered, still not understanding where the generation gap lay. I turned my gaze back to my PC. Since my job change, a few months had passed. Even though I was still in the same industry and marketing department, the internal systems and ways of working were, of course, different. Learning everything new at this age was quite challenging. Lately, everyone, from the young to the senior members, has started to talk to me more openly. It was a great joy to work in an environment where everyone had strong opinions and we could learn and grow from each other. The $15 million project is still ongoing. Ultimately, my trusted colleague at my former company took over my responsibilities, which was a relief. Seeing each other at meetings has become one of my joys. Since my career changed, I've realized there's still so much to learn in marketing. Despite being older, I'm still a newcomer here and eager to absorb as much as I can. Kevin, the meeting is starting. Hearing my colleague's voice, I quickly stood up from my seat. All right, I'm on my way. With a spring in my step, I headed to the conference room. I wonder what ideas will be shared today. Filled with anticipation, I opened the door to the meeting room. If you can solve this, I'll give you $30 million. As soon as the audience heard the words $30 million, there was a flurry of yells and screaming. Mr. Thomas grinned, but he couldn't possibly be sincere about spending $30 million to translate a few Chinese words. I was ready to answer no, but I looked at Emily, who was seated in the room's corner, before I did. I thought I might have heard her voice urging me. Jonathan, you got this. I inhaled deeply before turning to my laptop, focusing harder and doing my best to translate the Chinese language. Jonathan is my name. I work for my league, a trading company, and I am 33 years old. Mr. Thomas established this company 30 years ago to assist small and mid-sized businesses in foreign trade, and it now has multiple branches across the country. It has aided businesses in growing internationally, gaining customers, and streamlining logistics over the years. Our assistance has helped several companies develop significantly, and the business is still doing very well. To put it mildly, it's a stable job. I began working immediately after high school because of personal issues. However, they must be doing well financially because they employed someone like me. Mr. Thomas has created a workplace culture that is amicable and has less hierarchy because of his kind and compassionate personality. Many highly educated workers with exceptional academic backgrounds are drawn to this well-regarded business with a solid reputation. I never felt jealous or under pressure, even when junior coworkers who joined after me rose through the ranks quickly. More duties, longer hours, and more difficult assignments were all part of promotion. I simply wasn't cut out for that kind of life. I would rather get home on time every day, read a book, and drink tea than work nonstop all week to enjoy a fancy dinner and wine on the weekend. I knew I would probably never advance in the organization. I was the kind of person who fit in easily, plain appearance, unremarkable features. I hardly ever spoke up at monthly meetings, and my managers would frequently remark, "Oh, you're still working here," at office parties. I would laugh and ignore it, but it was difficult to determine if they were being serious or joking. Keeping my head down and completing my work without bringing attention to myself was my life. I didn't want to be recognized or promoted. All I wanted was to retire to a quiet life. However, Michael, a former coworker who is currently my boss, was the one person who continuously interrupted my peaceful existence. Michael was motivated, ambitious, and constantly hungry for success, the exact antithesis of me. He never missed an occasion to show off his status as an outstanding graduate from a renowned university. What is the error in this calculation? From which university did you receive your degree? Never heard of it. Haha. A school with an F rank? It isn't even a legitimate university. He would humiliate subordinates whenever they made mistakes, turning them into the laughingstock of the office. Yet, if one of his subordinates was about to close a big deal, Michael would suddenly swoop in. For someone like you, this isn't bad. Leave the rest to me, and you just handle the paperwork. And just like that, he would steal their achievements, taking all the credit for himself. Even if someone tried to protest, Michael had surrounded himself with other top-tier graduates who dominated the sales department, making it impossible to challenge him. Anyone who dared to stand up to him would be relentlessly pressured until they quit. Despite his tactics, upper management never reprimanded him because his performance was outstanding. On top of that, he was surprisingly supportive of employees with elite academic backgrounds, acting like a friendly and dependable mentor to them. He was sly, never giving anyone an opening to expose him. Of course, education is an important indicator of a person's dedication and perseverance, but Michael's way of judging people solely by their academic background never sat right with me. Naturally, he despised me for being a high school graduate. Though he didn't outright harass me, since we had joined the company at the same time, Michael would always find an opportunity to sneer at me. Watching someone as indecisive as Jonathan pisses me off. High school grads are just on a completely different level. I can't even comprehend them. And because of that, his followers also started looking down on me with disdain. Then, one day, a group of new employees arrived at our branch for training. They ranged from fresh-faced 20-somethings to experienced 40-year-olds. But among them, one person particularly caught everyone's attention, a woman named Emily. "Hey, did you see the new hire? She's absolutely gorgeous." "Oh yeah, that's." I wasn't too interested, but my colleagues smirked as they watched her introduce herself. "Nice to meet you all. I'm Emily." As she smiled and introduced herself, a round of enthusiastic applause filled the room. Emily, our newest colleague, had snow-like smooth skin, large dark eyes, and slightly upturned lips painted in a subtle shade of pink. She was so stunning that you and I couldn't help but stare. I couldn't help but wonder why someone so beautiful had joined a mid-sized trading company like ours. But according to what I heard, she had previously worked for a competitor, and our upper management had taken notice of her exceptional skills and headhunted her. She was 29, 4 years younger than me. To be scouted at such a young age meant she was exceptionally talented. She was a completely different kind of person from me. Thinking that, I quickly returned to my desk to finish my work. This morning, the moment I arrived at the office, Michael had dumped a mountain of paperwork on me, and I needed to get through it. But the moment Michael and his group heard about Emily's background, they immediately tried to get close to her. "So, Emily, I hear you went to a pretty good university. That's promising. In terms of rankings, maybe it's considered high, but I'm still new to this company, so I'll work hard with a fresh mindset." As Emily answered sincerely, Michael burst into loud, crude laughter. "No, no. Someone as brilliant as you is more than welcome here. This company has people who just sit at their desks and still collect a paycheck after all." As he said that, he probably glanced in my direction. Hearing his voice grow slightly louder, I simply focused on my work in front of me. You should stay away from bad examples like that. I'll teach you everything you need to know, so just rely on me, he continued. Okay. Since Michael was a senior figure at her new company, Emily probably couldn't push back too strongly. Seeing her lower her eyebrows in slight discomfort while brushing off the situation with a vague response, I couldn't help but think how troublesome this was. I was completely absorbed in my work when suddenly an unfamiliar female voice called out to me. "Excuse me." "Yes? Can I help you?" Looking up from my screen, I saw Emily standing in front of me. "May I ask your name?" I'm Jonathan." It seemed like she was making an effort to introduce herself to everyone. "I felt like I didn't get to greet you earlier," she said. "Oh, I had to get back to my desk midway through. I've been swamped with work. Sorry about that." Apparently, she had made the effort to stop by my desk. I hurriedly stood up from my seat. "Looking forward to working with you." "Likewise." A simple exchange of pleasantries should be enough. Sooner or later, she would probably forget I even existed. Thinking that, I casually went back to my work. But contrary to my expectations, her unpredictable interest in me didn't fade. Even a month after she joined, Emily would often strike up conversations with me. "Good morning, Jonathan." "Ah, morning." As I awkwardly returned her greeting, she let out a small chuckle. Then, suddenly, she seemed to notice something and reached out toward my head. "Your hair is sticking up here. You have bedhead." She smoothed it down with her fingers, making it feel as though she was patting my head. "You might be short on time in the mornings, but appearance is everything in sales. Try checking the mirror for a second before heading out." Despite her small scolding, Emily's face softened with a gentle smile. The surrounding employees stared at me and Emily with wide eyes, while others in the distance whispered among themselves. Noticing their reactions, I honestly felt like burying my head in my hands. I had spent my entire career as someone barely noticeable, yet suddenly, I was the center of attention, leaving me feeling both embarrassed and completely out of place. But whether she noticed my discomfort or not, Emily kept fussing with my hair, murmuring things like, maybe if I do this. Oh wait, it's sticking up again." She seemed completely indifferent to the stares from others or how I felt about it. This is kind of ticklish. Oh, that reminds me. I'm looking for a nice gift box of sweets to bring to a client. Do you have any recommendations, Jonathan?" After saying that, Emily tilted her slender neck slightly and looked at me with a pleading expression. Wanting to end the interaction as quickly as possible, I instinctively nodded multiple times. It was only after she had walked away that my brain finally started working properly again. Even as I resumed my work, my mind was completely occupied with the fact that a woman had actually relied on me for something. I have a sweet tooth and usually keep some snacks at my desk while working. I often try out newly released treats or popular items trending on social media, which must have caught Emily's attention with their novelty. I started feeling restless, realizing this could turn into something troublesome. But apparently, I wasn't the only one unsettled. Even though Michael was seated at a distance, he began handling his documents roughly, the rustling sound loud and aggressive. Then, as if confirming his irritation, he shot me a glare filled with resentment. "Don't get the wrong idea. It's not like she relies on you because you're useful. She just knows you're too incompetent for real work. Picking out a gift box is the only thing someone with no edge like you can handle." It was obvious now that Michael had taken quite a liking to Emily, and the fact that she had come to me instead of him had clearly gotten under his skin. Just like that, all my efforts to stay under the radar had gone to waste, and I found myself drawing more attention from Michael than ever before. Yet, despite his irritation, Emily continued to greet me first thing every morning and naturally sat next to me whenever we ended up in the cafeteria. Her constant proximity was enough to make me wonder if she actually had feelings for me, but I forced myself to stay level-headed. There was no way someone as beautiful and competent as Emily would be interested in an ordinary, unremarkable employee like me. This was probably just her being friendly, or maybe she didn't see me as a man at all and just thought of me as some harmless mascot. As I kept reminding myself of that, the company's 30th anniversary party drew closer. Since this marked a major milestone, the event was planned to be extravagant, with every employee invited. A rumor even spread that Mr. Thomas, the company's president, would be attending, causing the entire office to buzz with excitement as the day approached. Among those most excited was Michael. Every day, he strutted around the office, grinning smugly with an air of self-importance. The company has high expectations for me. With Mr. Thomas attending, this is the perfect chance to show how capable I am. Michael seemed to have no interest in celebrating the company's growth or fostering internal collaboration by sharing its vision. The only thing on his mind was how to climb the corporate ladder as quickly as possible. Not long after, I learned that Michael had volunteered to be the event organizer. The company's anniversary party was a major event. Taking on the role of organizer came with significant responsibility, but if executed well, it could leave a strong impression on upper management. Grinning smugly, Michael boasted to his group of followers, "If I pull this off, my promotion is as good as guaranteed. And don't worry, I'll make sure you guys benefit from it too." With that, Michael assembled an event planning team and actively took charge of decisions regarding the venue and program. However, when it came to the tedious tasks like securing the location and arranging decorations, he delegated everything to his subordinates. Just like in his daily work, the actual labor was done by his team while he only handled the easy, high-profile aspects that made him look good. Then, as if he had orchestrated everything on his own, he shamelessly flaunted his achievements to upper management. At one point, Michael deliberately walked over to my desk, his smirk widening. "Someone with your level of education would just be dead weight, so I won't bother giving you any tasks. But don't worry, you're still an employee of this company, so you better be there on the day of the event." "Understood." Hearing my response, Michael walked away, looking pleased with himself. But the expression he wore as he left made it clear he was definitely plotting something. Then, the day of the anniversary party arrived. It was held in a grand venue with no expense spared. And as much as I hated to admit it, Michael handled his role as organizer efficiently. For all his arrogance, he was undeniably capable. He had arranged for commemorative gifts, produced a video summarizing the company's history, and smoothly managed the proceedings. The event was divided into two parts. The first half welcomed clients and business partners, featuring presentations on the company's future vision and awards for long-serving employees. Once that concluded smoothly, only company personnel remained in the venue as the second half began. A pianist, a live band, and even notable figures associated with the company took the stage for performances. Unlike the formal dinner of the first half, the atmosphere was much more relaxed, with plenty of alcohol being served, turning the event into a lively celebration. After about an hour of enjoyment, Michael, in high spirits, raised his voice to address the crowd. "Tonight, we are surrounded by the company's finest employees, with unwavering dedication and exceptional contributions. Surely, there isn't a single incompetent employee among us." Right after declaring that, Michael cast a quick glance in my direction. Then, in a tone dripping with sarcasm, he continued speaking. "Since Mr. Thomas is here with us, why don't we take this opportunity to showcase our employees' skills? Trade and business rely heavily on English, after all. Let's have a surprise English proficiency test." His exaggerated announcement, reminiscent of a strict schoolteacher, elicited laughter from the audience. The test Michael had devised involved randomly selecting employees to come forward and translate given English passages with speed and accuracy, determining the winner. At first, the test began with basic business English questions directed at the younger employees. No matter how new you are, you should at least be able to answer questions at this level. Michael said, acting as the host, pressuring them with his remarks. The fresh-faced employees struggled, racking their brains and breaking into nervous sweats as they worked through the questions. Meanwhile, senior employees heckled from the sidelines, saying things like, "If you can't even understand this, you're worse than a student." Even though it was meant to be a lighthearted activity, the public humiliation unfolding in front of the entire company gave me a bad feeling. Mr. Thomas, the company president, was someone who deeply valued both the business and its employees. It was said that in his younger days, he had been so dedicated to building the company that his wife had left him, taking their young child with her. Since then, he had treated the company and its workers as if they were his own family. But would he really approve of this spectacle? Yet, as I glanced at him, I saw that he was casually sipping wine with a faint smile, watching the event unfold. Clearly intoxicated, he cupped a hand around his mouth and cheered, "Great job. Keep it up, everyone," showing no intention of calling off the event. In the end, the nervousness and difficulty of the challenge left most of the new hires unable to translate much at all, and they trudged back to their seats dejected. Seeing them like that, I couldn't help but feel bad. But apparently, the expression on my face came across as defiant. Noticing this, Michael smirked at me. "Well, I expected our employees to handle these easily, but I suppose the questions were too difficult. But don't worry, new hires. This company has employees with even less ability than you," he loudly declared into the microphone before singling me out. "If we're talking about incompetent employees, then of course, we have Jonathan here, who only got a high school diploma. Seeing his English skills should put your minds at ease." Michael turned his palm upward and curled his fingers in a taunting motion, wordlessly daring me to step forward. As the entire room's attention locked onto me, I felt the weight of their stares. Realizing there was no escape, I reluctantly walked over to stand beside him. "I'll show you how Jonathan, an incompetent person, and I, an excellent employee, translate at the same time. This will be a great opportunity to compare the results and see what happens to those who go through life without putting in the effort to learn." Michael's declaration sent another wave of murmurs through the crowd as comments like, "There's no way a high school graduate can handle this," spread throughout the room. Mr. Thomas stood up, taking the microphone. He suddenly made an unexpected announcement. "If we use the prepared questions, Michael will have an unfair advantage. So, how about I provide the test myself?" Michael froze for a moment at the sudden announcement, but he quickly realized this was a great opportunity to showcase his abilities to Mr. Thomas. With a look of eager anticipation, as if he were about to lick his lips in excitement, he accepted the challenge. Meanwhile, I didn't care what kind of competition it was. I just wanted to return to my seat and escape the spotlight as soon as possible. Seeing no objections from anyone, Mr. Thomas pulled out 2 magazines. "Our company's largest business partners are in China. You all remember the company-wide memo from 2 years ago urging employees to study Chinese, correct?" At Mr. Thomas's words, the room filled with hushed whispers. It was true that a company-wide email had once urged all employees to study Chinese. On top of that, the company had even offered to cover part of the tuition fees for language courses. I had never been interested in learning Chinese myself, but I knew that some of my colleagues had enrolled in language schools or taken online courses. However, no matter how hard I tried to recall, I had never once seen Michael studying Chinese. "I have here a Chinese economic magazine. How about you both translate the same page?" At the unexpected proposal, Michael, standing beside me, turned pale as he listened to Mr. Thomas's words. Still smiling, Mr. Thomas pressed on. "Let's see if you can translate it well enough to satisfy me. If you can solve this, I'll give you $30 million. At the mention of $30 million, the entire venue erupted with gasps and cheers. There was no way he was being serious. Michael had brought up this ridiculous surprise test like a school teacher, and now Mr. Thomas was playing along, probably planning to dramatically flash a piece of paper with $30 million written on it as a joke. From the murmurs around me, I could hear employees whispering, "There's no way a high school grad could handle Chinese. Mr. Thomas is being a bit cruel, isn't he?" Amidst it all, I felt a deep sense of disappointment. I had always respected Mr. Thomas for valuing the company and its employees, but was he also looking down on me just because of my education? Thinking that, I felt the urge to forfeit right then and there, letting Michael take the win. I didn't care if the quiz lost its excitement, or if the anniversary party turned awkward. I just wanted to walk away. But just as I was about to say, "I decline," I made eye contact with Emily, seated in the corner of the room. It seemed like she had been watching me from the very beginning. At first, I thought I was imagining it, so I glanced away several times. But every time I looked back, Emily was still staring at me with a serious expression. Then, I could have sworn I heard her clear and firm voice saying, "Jonathan, you got this." I couldn't even remember the last time someone had cheered for me. A moment ago, I was set on backing out, but now I felt an overwhelming desire not to disappoint the one person who believed in me. Shaking off my hesitation, I straightened my posture and resolved to do my best. In front of me was a laptop set up for both Michael and me to type translations. Taking a deep breath, I turned my focus to the screen and sharpened my concentration. Diving into the Chinese text, I scanned several lines ahead, carefully considering how to translate each phrase accurately without losing its meaning. Various translation options formed and vanished in my mind as my fingers swiftly typed away, the rhythmic sound of my keystrokes echoing in the otherwise silent hall. Meanwhile, Michael stood frozen beside me, staring in shock as he muttered, "What? How is Jonathan? This doesn't make sense." Before Michael could even finish his sentence, I had already completed the translation and submitted my work to Mr. Thomas. He silently reviewed it for a moment, then, with a beaming smile, placed a firm hand on my back. "This is outstanding. It's clear and precise, and you've accurately translated even the tricky parts that often cause errors in international contracts." With that, he applauded warmly. Encouraged by his reaction, a few employees hesitantly joined in clapping cautiously. But within seconds, the applause swelled into a thunderous ovation that filled the entire hall. Michael, however, abandoned his blank laptop screen and stormed toward me, his face twisted in disbelief. "Hey, what was that? How did you cheat? There's no way a high school graduate like you understands Chinese." As Michael, his face pale, grabbed me in a panic, I responded in my usual slow and calm manner. "I didn't do anything special. I just translated it normally." "That's impossible," he shouted. "A high school grad like you couldn't possibly have studied another foreign language on top of English." At this point, there was no way around it. With a sigh, I decided to tell the truth. Actually, I only completed my education in Japan up until high school. After that, I attended Harvard University, where I rigorously studied Chinese. Harvard has one of the most intense language programs in the world, bringing together students from all over to master various languages. In those courses, speaking English was strictly prohibited. On top of the standard university curriculum, the language programs assigned mountains of homework, creating an incredibly demanding schedule. But in just 6 months, students could achieve fluency. I had never mentioned my overseas education because I didn't want to be judged based on my academic background. I never expected to reveal it in front of the entire company at a party. Even after hearing my explanation, Michael's face only turned paler as he shook his head in denial. Instead of accepting the truth, he frantically searched me for hidden answers, patting down my suit, checking my pockets, and even flipping through my wallet. Of course, he found nothing, and in frustration, he erupted again. "Mr. Thomas, let's do this again, but in English this time. There's no way he knows Chinese. This has to be some kind of mistake. Now, calm down and take a seat. Mr. Thomas replied, setting aside his wine glass. He picked up a glass of water and, to everyone's surprise, made an unexpected announcement. I'd like to take this moment to address something important. I've been concerned about the rising employee turnover rate in recent years. A hush fell over the room as everyone turned their attention to him. Glancing across the crowd, Mr. Thomas continued, I've noticed this trend is especially prominent among employees who join straight out of high school. That's why I've been closely observing all of you tonight. Most of the employees listened in silence, but a few visibly paled. Michael and his group of followers. After watching today's events, I now understand the reason behind our high turnover rate, he stated firmly. With all due respect, sir, I don't understand your point. Employees with strong academic backgrounds are highly capable and dedicated to continued learning, Michael said, struggling to comprehend why he was suddenly under scrutiny. He hurriedly attempted to justify himself, but his desperate excuses only made things worse. That mindset, the belief that academic background alone determines a person's worth, is exactly what needs to change. It's not about what you did in the past, but what you can do now that truly matters. Mr. Thomas's voice was calm, yet there was a quiet authority in his words. Michael flinched, his body stiffening before bowing his head repeatedly in remorse. Even as someone who had joined the company at the same time as him, I had never seen Michael look so defeated. But Mr. Thomas paid him no further attention, simply turning his back on the trembling Michael as he moved on. Well then, as promised, Jonathan, I will give you the $30 million. You mean you're going to hold up a piece of paper that says $30 million, right? I had assumed Mr. Thomas was joking, but he shook his head seriously. I'm not joking. I'm really giving you $30 million, though not in cash. Instead, I'm appointing you as the new executive director, a position that will shape the future of this company. Executive director? What do you mean? According to Mr. Thomas, the company was planning to deepen its ties with Chinese enterprises more than ever before. To lead this expansion, they wanted someone well-versed in the language and culture to step up and drive the company forward. If you take on the role, prove yourself, and grow the company's profits, you may even become the next CEO. And if that happens, you'll effectively take control of this company, with its $30 million in capital. The sheer scale of what he was saying left me speechless. I could only nod in stunned silence. Just then, Emily, who had been standing beside me, let out a gasp of surprise and admiration. That's amazing. My father thinks you're capable enough to entrust the company to you, Jonathan. You really are as brilliant as I thought. Wait, Mr. Thomas is your father. My already overwhelmed brain felt like it was about to short-circuit from this new revelation. Seeing my shocked expression, Emily gave me a mischievous smile and finally revealed the truth. She was the daughter of Mr. Thomas and his ex-wife, the one who had left him years ago due to his workaholic nature. When I was little, I hated how my father was always consumed by work, she said wistfully, looking a little embarrassed. But as I grew older, I started wondering what kind of job could possibly captivate him that much. And before I knew it, I had ended up in the same industry myself. Emily had proven herself to be incredibly capable, showing the same business acumen as her father while working at a competitor. Because she had a different last name, no one realized she was Mr. Thomas's daughter when she was recruited into the company. As we marveled at the series of unexpected truths, the three of us, Emily, Mr. Thomas, and I, found ourselves caught up in lively conversation. Emily had also started learning Chinese recently, so I answered her questions to the best of my ability. Meanwhile, Michael had gone completely silent, as if the fire inside him had been extinguished. No matter how much his followers tried to speak to him, he barely responded, sulking in a corner for the rest of the evening. In the end, his group took over the remaining tasks and somehow managed to wrap up the party without further issue. However, After publicly humiliating himself and exposing his toxic, education-obsessed mindset, Michael's reputation plummeted. He quickly became an outcast in the office, ignored by almost everyone. Later, an internal review revealed that he had been constantly taking credit for his subordinates' work. As a result, his past achievements were reevaluated, and he faced a significant salary reduction. Yet even after everything, Michael remained defiant. Why should I, someone as competent as I am, be punished? This is Japan. Speaking Japanese should be enough. Clients would obviously prefer dealing with a prestigious university graduate over some no-name employee. Showing no remorse and completely failing to understand the situation, he continued to rant. Perhaps as a response to his stubbornness, he was reassigned to an overseas branch. It was probably Mr. Thomas's way of teaching him a lesson by making him experience international business firsthand. And as fate would have it, the branch he was sent to was in South America, a place where English was barely spoken. The thought of him now struggling to learn a completely new language almost made me feel sorry for him. But at the same time, I couldn't help but chuckle. As for me, I was officially promoted to executive director as promised. Determined to prove myself worthy of the title, I poured my efforts into expanding our trade in the Chinese market, gradually securing solid profits. "Jonathan, you truly are as capable as I expected." Mr. Thomas praised me without hesitation. But I knew that a huge part of my success was thanks to Emily's support. Ever since that anniversary party, our relationship had grown much closer. Now, we were in a serious relationship, planning for the future together. As executive director, I often faced tough decisions, but her intelligence and guidance always helped me through. Moving forward, I wanted to continue growing the company alongside Emily, Mr. Thomas, and my colleagues. With that determination in mind, I took another step forward into my workplace, ready for whatever lay ahead.